The sky was fire. Smoke curled up from the battlefield in thick black tendrils, blotting out the stars. Scorched metal and the acrid stench of burned flesh filled the air, mixing with the distant echoes of gunfire. The war had ended here, on this nameless, blood-soaked colony world, but it had not ended well. For the humans, at least. He lay motionless amid the dead, his body half buried beneath the twisted wreckage of an armored personnel carrier. Blood, his own and others', had soaked through his combat fatigues, congealing in the deep gash across his abdomen. His left arm was broken, the bone threatening to pierce the skin. His right eye refused to open, swollen shut from the repeated blows of an enemy boot. His breath was shallow, faint, and yet he listened. The aliens were still here, their guttural voices rumbling through the battlefield like distant thunder. He recognized the language, not because he spoke it, but because he'd spent enough time fighting them to know their tone. Derision, mockery, arrogance. They were counting bodies, confirming kills. A squad of them moved through the wreckage, their armor gleaming even in the dim firelight. Tall, reptilian, with slitted yellow eyes that gleamed with cold amusement. The Drevans, the self-proclaimed masters of warfare, had finally crushed this last pathetic human resistance. One of them kicked over a corpse, a young Marine barely past 20. The alien snorted in disgust, turning away as if the sight of human frailty was beneath him. A second Dravan knelt near the pile of bodies, glancing toward the shattered remains of a human command post. This was the last of them. Its voice clicked in its native tongue. A third alien, likely the squad leader, prodded a corpse with the muzzle of his rifle. They're done, slaughtered like animals. He spat onto the ground. No survivors, no resistance. The first Dravan let out a rough, barking laugh. Pathetic creatures. They don't even die well. The squad leader glanced down at his wrist console, pressing a few keys. We'll mark this site for cleanup. Burn the bodies. Let this world rot. The others grunted in agreement. One last sweep, then they moved off, their voices fading as they stepped over the wreckage, leaving the battlefield behind. And that was their mistake. His right hand twitched, fingers curling around something cold and slick with blood. A combat knife, its edge still wet from the last enemy he'd cut down before falling. His heartbeat was slow, steady, too weak for them to notice. He waited. Minutes passed, long enough for the Drevans to believe their work was done. Then, with agonizing slowness, he turned his head, blinking through the haze of blood and dust. His one good eye focused on the retreating figures. They should have made sure he was dead. Pain lanced through his ribs as he shifted, dragging himself free from the twisted wreckage. His broken arm hung uselessly at his side, but his legs, those still worked. Barely. He bit down on the inside of his cheek to keep from making a sound. Pain was a familiar companion. He had no time for it now. He forced himself upright, using the remains of a shattered turret to steady himself. Every inch of movement sent fresh waves of agony through his battered body, but he didn't stop. Couldn't. He scanned the battlefield with a soldier's practiced gaze, searching. The ground was littered with discarded weapons, spent casings, and bodies. Most of the rifles were beyond repair, blown apart in the bombardment or warped from the heat. But there, just a few feet away, half buried beneath a fallen Marine, an enemy sidearm. He staggered forward, dropping to one knee as he pried it from beneath the weight of the dead. The weapon was sleek, alien in design, but he'd used one before. He checked the charge. Half full. Good enough. A slow breath. In. Out. His grip tightened on the pistol. The Drevans were still within range, moving in loose formation toward their waiting dropship. There were 5 of them, maybe more inside the transport. Under normal circumstances, he'd stand no chance. But these weren't normal circumstances. He was already dead, as far as they knew. He raised the pistol, lined up the shot. His finger tightened on the trigger. The first bolt of plasma took the nearest Dravan in the back of the skull, vaporizing flesh and bone. The alien dropped without a sound, crumpling forward like a puppet with its strings cut. The others barely had time to react. The second shot punched through another's chest, sending it sprawling. Shouts of alarm. The remaining Dravan's whirled, weapons rising. Too slow. He moved on instinct, body screaming in protest, as he dove behind the wreckage of a fallen gunship. Plasma fire scorched the air where he'd been standing a second before. He hit the ground hard, rolling onto his side as another volley of bolts slammed into the debris. The Drevans were professionals. He'd give them that. They were already fanning out, try to box him in. Smart, but not smart enough. He waited, controlled his breathing. One of them advanced too quickly, eager for the kill. A mistake. He surged up from cover, squeezing the trigger. A flash of blue light. The Dravan jerked as a shot caught him in the throat, gurgling as he collapsed. Two left. They switched tactics, one laying down suppressive fire while the other flanked. He gritted his teeth, ducking low, counting the seconds between bursts. They were trying to push him out, force him into the open. He let them. A sudden movement. He bolted from cover, twisting mid-step to fire. The shot clipped the flanker in the shoulder, spinning him around. The alien stumbled, roaring in pain. The squad leader took the shot he'd been waiting for. He threw himself aside at the last moment. The plasma bolt seared past his ribs, close enough to scorch fabric, but not flesh. He hit the ground and fired before the Dravan could adjust. The last alien crumpled, yellow eyes wide in disbelief. Silence. His breath came in ragged gasps. Smoke curled from the barrel of the pistol, the weapon's heat burning into his palm. The pain barely registered. He was alive. Barely. He staggered forward, yanking the plasma rifle from the squad leader's corpse. More energy. More firepower. He would need it. Because this wasn't over. They thought they had won. They thought they had crushed the last of humanity's resistance. But they had only made one mistake. They let him live. And now, he was coming for them. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying the acrid scent of burning flesh and smoldering metal. He moved like a ghost through the wreckage, each step measured, deliberate. His body screamed with every motion. His broken arm, his bruised ribs, the wound across his stomach that still wept blood. None of it mattered. Pain was secondary. The only thing that mattered now was the hunt. He had taken their rifle, their weapons, their armor. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a specter of war, a nightmare given form. The Drevans had slaughtered his people, crushed his unit, burned this world to ash. And they had left him to die. They thought it was over. They were wrong. His fingers curled tighter around the plasma rifle as he moved through the debris, his one good eye scanning the battlefield. A Dravan dropship loomed in the distance, its ramp still open, the glow of interior lights casting long shadows against the wreckage. They were still here. Perhaps a full squad. Perhaps more. It didn't matter. His approach was silent. Careful. He stalked through the remnants of the last human stronghold, weaving between the skeletal remains of buildings reduced to rubble. The Drevans had been thorough in their destruction. The once thriving colony was now nothing more than a graveyard. Movement. He froze, pressing himself against a charred support beam, watching as two Drevans emerged from the ship's ramp. They carried themselves with the casual arrogance of victors, their weapons slung loosely across their backs. One of them spoke, its guttural voice carrying over the wind. "They will strip this place by morning. There is nothing left." The other laughed, adjusting the strap of his rifle. The humans fought well. For primitives. They were desperate. Desperation is not skill. The officers will want a full report. If there were any survivors, The first Dravan never finished his sentence. A single plasma bolt burned through his skull, his body collapsing before his companion could react. The second alien whirled, reaching for his weapon. Too slow. Another shot punched in his chest, sending him sprawling backward, gasping, choking. The soldier stepped forward, his expression blank, his one good eye fixed on the dying alien. The Draven coughed, thick black blood bubbling from his lips. Ew. It rasped, confusion flickering in its gaze. You should be dead. The soldier knelt beside the dying creature, watching his life drain from its slitted yellow eyes. His voice was quiet, almost distant. I was. He rose, stepping over the corpse, weapon still warm in his grip. He needed to move fast. The shots would draw attention. The dropship was his goal now. It was likely a forward operating base, a hub for the remaining occupation force. If he could get inside, he could gather intel, sabotage their systems, cripple their communications. Maybe even find a way off this dead world. Or maybe he would just kill them all. He slipped through the shadows, the soft hum of the dropship's engines filling the air. The craft was a sleek, angular thing, built for speed and efficiency. The Drevans favored function over aesthetics. No wasted space, no unnecessary design. He had fought them long enough to know their architecture. The entrance was unguarded. Strange. He expected more resistance. He stepped inside, plasma rifle at the ready. The interior was dimly lit, sterile, the walls lined with control panels and supply crates. Further ahead, he could hear voices, 3, maybe 4. He moved with practiced efficiency, weaving between the storage containers. The voices became clearer, still running scans. The wreckage might hold salvageable tech. Doubtful. The bombardment left nothing intact. We still have orders to confirm all kills. No loose ends. A pause. Then, did you hear that? He had already moved. The first Dravan turned just as the soldier's knife buried itself in his throat. A strangled gurgle. A spray of blood. The body collapsed. The second Dravan raised his weapon, mouth opening to shout. Too late. A single shot burned through his sternum, his armor offering no resistance. The third fired, his plasma bolts searing through the air as the soldier dove behind cover. Heat seared past his shoulder. He ignored it. He moved fast, slipping between crates, flanking. The Draven hesitated, 1 second too long. The soldier was on him, knife flashing in the dim light. The blade slid between armor plates, puncturing a lung. The alien gasped, clawing at the wound. The soldier twisted the blade, yanking it free, stepping back as the Dravan crumpled. Silence. He exhaled slowly, his grip tightening around the stolen weapon. 3 down. More would come. He needed to work fast. Moving to the nearest console, he activated the interface. Draven's script scrolled across the screen. He couldn't read it, but he didn't need to. He navigated through muscle memory, recalling past missions, past infiltrations. Then he found what he was looking for. Deployment rosters, coordinates, a map of the enemy's remaining forces. There were still more of them, not just here, but scattered across the sector. They had not yet left. This was not the final victory they believed it to be. He committed the information to memory. He wouldn't have time to extract the data physically. Then his eyes landed on another detail. Orbital strike authorization codes. A slow smile ghosted across his lips. They had left their weapons active. Their orbital cannons were still online, waiting for commands. He could turn them against their own fleet. He heard footsteps. They had found bodies. Shouts echoed through the corridor. He turned, raising his weapon, heart steady, mind focused. They would come in force now. Good. He had work to do. The alarm blared through the corridors, a wailing, alien frequency that reverberated through the ship's hull. Red emergency lights bathed the metallic walls in an eerie glow, casting flickering shadows as he moved. His grip tightened on the plasma rifle, stolen Draven blood still slick on his knife. They knew he was here now. Good. Boots pounded against the floor in the distance. Multiple sets, moving fast. They were converging. He checked his ammunition. 3 plasma cells left. Enough. He pressed against a bulkhead, listening. He could hear them coordinating, barking orders in their guttural language. They were used to fighting from a position of strength, overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and technology. They were not used to hunting something that fought back. The first squad moved into view. 5 of them, armed, armored, visors scanning the corridor. They advanced with professional efficiency, weapons raised, checking corners, covering each other's movements. It didn't matter. He struck fast. A single, controlled burst took the lead soldier in the throat, armor melting away under the plasma's heat. The alien fell, choking on its own blood. The others reacted too slow. He shifted position, dropping another with a headshot before diving behind a stack of supply crates. They returned fire, plasma bolts scorching the walls, melting metal. He moved before they could pin him down, flanking left, firing as he ran. A shot caught one in the chest, sending the Drevan crashing into the bulkhead. 2 left. One turned, raising a heavy repeater. The soldier didn't hesitate. He surged forward, knife flashing in the red light, slamming into the alien's ribs. The Draven gasped, stumbled back. The soldier twisted the blade, yanked it free, and kicked the body aside. The last Draven dropped his weapon and bolted down the corridor. Coward. The soldier lifted the rifle and fired. The bolt struck between the alien's shoulder blades, sending him sprawling forward, limbs twitching. Then, silence. He exhaled, rolling his shoulders, adjusting his grip. That was only the first wave. More would come. He had to move. The control room was ahead. He knew the Drevans would fortify it, if they hadn't already. It was the heart of the ship's operations, where he could access the orbital strike codes and turn their own weapons against them. A cold determination settled in his chest. He could end this. The corridor ahead stretched into darkness, the emergency lights casting long shadows. He moved quickly, stepped silent against the metal floor. His body protested every motion. His ribs ached, his arm throbbed. The wound across his stomach burned, but he ignored it. Pain meant nothing. Not now. A door loomed at the end of the corridor, thick and reinforced. The control room. Locked. Of course. He knelt beside the control panel, prying off the casing, exposing the wires beneath. Draven technology was advanced, but not infallible. He had broken into their systems before. He would do it again. Footsteps. Close. He worked faster, fingers moving with practiced precision, cutting wires, overriding locks. The security system fought back, flashing warnings in Dravan script. The footsteps grew louder. He could hear them speaking, weapons humming to life. Almost there. A sharp beep. The lock disengaged. He pushed the door open just as the Dravans rounded the corner. They saw him, raised their weapons. Too late. He threw himself inside, slamming the door shut, jamming the lock. Plasma bolts scorched the metal, but it held. For now. The control room was a circular chamber, walls lined with monitors displaying tactical readouts, ship schematics, planetary scans. In the center, a single command console pulsed with a soft blue glow. This was it. He approached the terminal, fingers flying over the controls. He didn't need to understand their language. He had memorized the layout, the sequences. He pulled up the orbital cannon interface. The targeting reticles hovered over the planet's surface, waiting for input. He smiled. Then, behind him, the door exploded inward. The force of the blast sent him sprawling, heat licking at his back. He rolled, rifle slipping from his grip as the Dravan stormed in. 4 of them. He had no cover, no time to reach his weapon. The lead soldier raised his rifle, aiming for his head, then stopped. A slow realization dawned in the Drevan's yellow eyes. The alien's voice was filled with something that almost sounded like fear. "You're still alive." The soldier grinned, wiping blood from his lip. Disappointed, The Draven hesitated. A flicker of doubt. That was all he needed. He moved fast, grabbing the nearest loose console panel and hurling it at the alien's face. The Draven staggered back, giving him just enough time to lunge forward. He grabbed the alien's weapon, yanking it aside as the plasma bolt discharged into the floor. A swift elbow to the throat sent the Draven choking, reeling. The others moved to fire. He spun, using the wounded Draven as a shield. Plasma bolts struck the alien's back, sending him convulsing to the ground. Then he was on them. The fight was brutal, messy, close quarters. He grabbed one Draven by the arm, twisting until he heard the sickening crack of bone. A stolen knife buried itself into another's chest, the alien screaming as he fell. The last one tried to run. He grabbed a Draven by the collar, slammed him against the console. The alien struggled, panicked. Override codes, the soldier demanded. The Draven sneered, blood leaking from its mouth. You're too late. A deep rumble shook the ship. The soldier frowned. He turned to the monitors, his heart clenched. The Draven fleet was repositioning. Something was coming. He had to move. Now. The ship trembled as the Draven fleet shifted formation, their massive warships casting deep shadows over the planet below. The targeting systems on the monitors flickered, recalibrating. A countdown appeared in their alien script, seconds ticking away. The orbital cannons were priming to fire. If they completed their sequence, everything below would be turned to glass. He had no time left. The Draven officer pinned against the console bared his fangs in something between pain and triumph. You can't stop it, he rasped. It's already begun. The soldier tightened his grip on the alien's throat, shoving him harder against the controls. Then I'll just have to break it. He slammed the officer's head into the panel, knocking him unconscious, then turned his attention to the interface. The system required a Draven command override. He couldn't input the codes manually, but that didn't mean he couldn't make the system work for him. He grabbed the dead officer's wrist and pressed it against the biometric scanner. A beep. The screen flickered, the console awaiting further instructions. He worked fast, bypassing security layers, pushing deeper into the ship's mainframe. The Drevans' arrogance worked against them. They never expected an outsider to breach their systems, let alone use them as a weapon. He rerouted control of the orbital cannons, altering their targeting parameters. The fleet, not the planet, now lay in their sights. The countdown hit 15 seconds. The door behind him groaned, plasma cutters slicing through the metal. The remaining Draven forces were breaching, their angered voices echoing through the hall. They had lost squads hunting him. Now, they wanted revenge. He wasn't going to give them a chance. A final keystroke. The countdown hit 0. The orbital cannons fired. The Draven warships, once so confident in their dominance, never saw it coming. Beams of searing white energy lanced downward, slamming into their hulls. Armor melted, cores detonated, and fire erupted in the vacuum of space. Chain reactions tore through their formations as one ship after another was engulfed in destruction. The ship he stood in shuddered violently as debris rained down, the force of nearby detonations ripping through its outer hull. Emergency klaxon screamed. The artificial gravity flickered. Sparks cascaded from the ceiling, consoles shorting out, plunging the room into chaos. The door behind him burst open. Draven stormed inside, weapons raised. Too late. The soldier didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fallen plasma rifle, dove into a roll, and fired. The first two aliens dropped before they could react, their bodies hitting the ground in smoking heaps. The remaining soldiers spread out, returning fire, but their footing was unstable, the ship buckling beneath them. The soldier moved with ruthless precision, weaving between cover, returning fire with deadly accuracy. One alien reached for a blade. He closed the distance, grabbed the Drevan's wrist, and drove a knife up into its gut. The ship let out a deep, metallic groan. Something was failing. The deck beneath them tilted. His window was closing. He sprinted toward the corridor, plasma bolts searing past him. He needed to reach the escape pods before the ship collapsed completely. The lights flickered, smoke clogging the air, the distant sounds of secondary explosions echoing through the halls. He reached the launch bay. A single pod remained. Its doors hung open, the controls active. He didn't stop running. Behind him, more Drevans entered the bay, their rage overshadowed only by desperation. Their fleet was gone. Their command ship was dying. They had nothing left but vengeance. They fired. He dove inside the pod, slamming to release. The hatch sealed just as plasma bolts slammed against it. A lurch, then weightlessness as the pod jettisoned from the ship, tumbling into the void. Through the viewport, he watched as the Draven warship was consumed by fire, its structure breaking apart, spiraling downward into the planet's atmosphere. The sky lit up as it burned, its wreckage scattering like falling stars. He exhaled, pressing his head back against the pod's seat. His body ached. His wounds screamed. But he was alive, and the planet was safe. The Drevans had tried to kill him, but they had only made him angry.